Hello, everyone. This is Dan with the Spiritual Underground Podcast, coming to you from my home here in New Albany. You'll see a little different background. Some things have been changing around my home here lately, and I still have the podcast studio set up in the downstairs dining room. But uh, just to be on personal matter, my father and I have switched places, and now I'm living in the upstairs living space because he's having trouble getting up and down the steps, and so he's sitting down there in the living room watching TV, and I didn't want to tell him he had to go to bed, Dad, so I can do a podcast. So I moved my gear up here. If you're just coming along, this podcast is primarily 12-step recovery material. That's my foundation. But as has been happening lately, is a lot of guests have been coming on the show talking about other ways. Yeah, there's a concept in 12-step recovery that says you need to continue to grow spiritually. You need to continue to enlarge your spiritual life. And I'm not necessarily talking about religion, but if that's it for you, that's cool too. But and what I think about is that, the spirit inside of me basically got sick from the dope and the booze, and it needed to heal. It needed some therapy and some tenderness and some love and some things till that spirit could heal inside of me. And now my job is to make sure to keep that spirit healthy and continue to feed it and basically just take care of myself today. And my guests bring all kinds of cool ways to do that and the angles that they bring. My guest today is I didn't know that. I didn't see that in the beginning. That Dr. Nicole Dolan, is that correct?
Mhm. Sure.
Do you go
Yes.
by Nicole?
You can call me Nicole.
Okay. I didn't know
Yeah.
if it was a
Mhm.
Nikki or a Nick I run into somebody whose name was Nicole lately, and she went by Nick, uh,
Mm,
which is
yeah. Yeah. Most people call me Nicole.
good deal. I'm glad to have you on the show. How's
Mm.
it going today?
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's going well so far today, which is nice because as we briefly discussed, it was rather hard the last few weeks. And it makes me think of the eclipse that we just came through. And there's an astronomical way to see that, and some people lean into astrological ways to see that. And so the way that I hold that is just by simply saying something was happening. And I noticed it in my practice as a psychologist, and I noticed it in my home as a mother. So to be doing
Hmm.
okay today is a nice feeling.
Yeah. I packed up my kids back. What was it in 2017? Was it 18 when the one eclipse come through with the 100%? And it was just right outside. I had to drive down to Tennessee from the Louisville area. And we went down there and I had no idea. There was something that drew me. I didn't know anything really about it, but there was something that
Hmm.
drew me down there. And that'll happen to me now and again where I get pulled someplace. And I listened to that today. And I packed up,
Yeah.
didn't even know where I was going. Turned out I had a buddy who had a friend that had some farm down there. And he said, come on
Wow.
down. I didn't know where I was going, but it ended up just working out perfect. And I didn't know
Yeah.
an eclipse was on my bucket list until I stood there for a few minutes in that 100% deal. And then in 24, it come through here and it was on, there was a 100% eclipse here. And
Hmm.
I own some property out about an hour outside of town. I got 54 acres out there and a cabin and stuff. And so I invited all my friends and we
Hmm.
all went and spent the day. Some of us spent the night. And so in the past few years, I've got to experience two 100% solar eclipses. And I venture to say there's not too many people get to see two of them.
Yeah, that's true. And most people, I feel like it's a new thing for people to venture out and feel like what you're talking about, like a pull to go see what's happening and I don't know that there was really any explanation for any of us that did. It just was people felt moved to go do that. I remember that a few years ago, especially.
Yeah, it was. You're on the
Yeah.
West Coast. Where are you located?
I am on the West Coast. Yeah.
California? Or,
So I was in California. My business and a lot of my life is in California, but I'm currently in Nevada.
oh, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, right around the corner. I'm being pulled out that way now. I've never seen the Grand Canyon
Right.
and Zion and all that. And there's something in my heart that's saying, "Go westward, son." And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm planning a little, maybe a solo road trip out there with camping gear and just
Very
wing it,
cool.
just wing it. Uh, I
You
did.
can do that when it's just you, right?
Yep. Last summer I
Yeah.
was pulled towards Gettysburg. the
Mm.
battlefield. And I had not,
Okay.
I'm not really a big Civil War guy, but there was things come to me, that synchronicity thing where, you hear about it from this angle and that angle and this angle. It's like, okay, I hear you. What is this? Am I supposed to be doing something here? And I had like by accident one day was just one of these epic days from the time I woke up to the time I laid my head in the bed. It was just magical, and I was by myself, and and it wouldn't mean anything probably to anybody else to explain it, but it
Mhm.
meant something to me, and I
Yeah.
hold that dearly. It was a really heavy day because of the energy that's in that battlefield. There's
Hmm.
something left behind from that, and I follow a guy on YouTube who does battlefield walks, and I love him, and eat him up. And just so happened that morning he was giving a tour, so I got to go do a battlefield walk with
Mm.
my favorite dude, and so it all started out really cool. But that draw to stuff is something I've learned. That's something to do with this spirit thing of listening to that,
Hmm.
and feeding my spirit in the ways that the universe is offering to me.
Yeah, it sounds like you're someone who really listens to that. And if I had words for that, I would say intuition, synchronicity,
Yep.
soul. I'm somebody who listens to that too. If I've heard something, three times, I'm paying attention. If I feel pulled or drawn to something or something just feels right. I mean, I'm somebody who the way that I wound up in Nevada didn't really make a lot of sense. It was just I was in a situation where I was like, everybody was moving. So many people were leaving California, and that's not why I left, but I just started feeling into it. I was like, I wonder if I'm part of that current, even if it's not forever. I love California, but there's a lot of things going on there that I don't appreciate. And so I kind of just like felt into this current, and I was like, I wonder if I'm part of that. And then, one thing just sort of like opened up after another, including like, a house that was like sitting on the market, like a hot market, like hotcakes. They were going, like no houses were sitting on a market, and this one just kind of sat there and waited for me. I was like, I don't know, maybe I need to go see this house. And so I decided to just drive, 9 hours. I grew up in Lake Tahoe, so it's not unusual for me to like it's home for me. I didn't go, somewhere I'd never been, but still just the call to come home in some ways and to return to myself. That journey, that leg of the journey started coming through very intuitively. Like it was just like numbers were aligning, the house was like waiting. It wound up being like the people who own the house wound up being so similar to like me and my past. And, the reason they couldn't sell their house is because they were building a house and it wasn't done yet. And I was like, well, I don't have a move-in date. I'm just somebody who's like thinking about moving and buying your house. So anyways, there were a lot of and I can share too. I have these little oracle cards, and I remember sitting on the phone the day when they got another offer, because of course you make an offer on a house and then somebody else comes in, and as soon as that happened and it was like, okay, you need to make a decision like right now. I was like, okay, I have like 36 cards in this oracle deck. I was like, if I pull the one that says yes, I'm gonna do it. And I did. So I said, okay, I guess I'm moving and I'm buying that house. So I am certainly someone who follows the currents and the calls and goes where the energy moves. And I also have had a lot of experience in that too.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It seems to me anyway, and there's always exceptions, but it seems to me, and it has been my experience personally, that there was a certain amount of maturity had to come about before I could like get into that. I just was aloof as a young person in my 20s and 30s and stuff. And it wasn't really
Yeah.
until my mid 40s, really, that I started actually feeling like where I felt like I was a little bit more in tune with things. Otherwise, kind of felt like, of course, I was doing what I was doing too, which wasn't really helping anything, but felt like I had
Mhm.
pinball machine. I was just bouncing off of whatever catalyst happened to be bumping into, and later on in Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about jumping into the stream of life. in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing about swimming upstream. And I turned around and decided to go with the flow rather than fight it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what's really interesting and comes to me too is so I'm a depth psychologist, which people usually don't know what that means. But if I were to explain it as simply as I could, instead of paying attention to symptoms of things like depression and anxiety and saying like how do we get rid of that, we pay attention to those symptoms and say, well, what does the soul want? Like what's happening on a
Mm.
much deeper level? What is this about like catalysts for transformation and growth in your life, et cetera? So, from that perspective, I was going to say, I've really held, and I don't push this on anyone, but for who it resonates for and with, I've really held that once we start doing our healing work, whether that's like 12-step recovery, therapy, etc., it starts to provide kind of like, if you can think of like, I don't know if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, so at the bottom, and just for your listeners, if they're not, at the bottom of the pyramid, you have basically like your foundational needs. So, like, what are your needs to, make sure that you have food, shelter, clothing, water, right? And at the very top of the pyramid, as you move up, you get to peak spiritual experiences, I think is what the top is, or something like that. And basically, I feel like that really aligns for me, and it comes up in regards to what you're saying because I feel like when people heal, when they start doing that work, it's kind of like the foundational work. And
Mm.
then what happens when you move from this place of like, okay, I've been a victim of these circumstances or these experiences, which often is why I've been drinking or using drugs. Maybe I'm not conscious of that, but like there's pain there, right?
Mhm.
So once we move through that pain and we get into a place of like, okay, now I'm surviving, I have tools. I feel like depth psychology, spirituality, ways that you can work beyond just what maybe counseling can give you is when we get to that place and we start to do that deeper work, that's when like we really start to open intuitively. Like we start to really be able to listen to the unseen world. And for those who have had that experience, it's like, yes, that makes sense, and for those who haven't, it sometimes it can feel like, well, how do I get there? How is that accessible? So I like to speak to that part of doing your healing work and taking step by step on that journey is what gets you closer. It does open you up. My
Yeah,
my thoughts. Yeah.
I agree. I agree completely. It's a little bit like being insulated or something, where you just can't get the signal. The signal won't come in.
Hmm.
Another big book reference is being blocked from the sunlight of the spirit. I can't,
Hmm.
I can't, I can't access that, and it's almost like an antenna comes up out of you later. That was the way I
Yeah.
visualize it, and all of a sudden I'm like picking up wavelengths aren't that I can't see, feel, hear. Sometimes I think I'm a little crazy because I'm picking something up, and
Yeah.
but in our circles,
Yeah.
we hear that quite often. I've got a great men's home group that really is plugged into one another and really cultivates that. And at some level, there's a certain piece of it that's actually like giving permission to these men to feel that way too.
Hmm.
Because they won't. It's I will venture to say and I don't know, again, I don't mean to be, hopefully this will be taken the right way. I see that women tend to be a little more intuitive naturally and a little bit more open to that than men tend to be. We tend to be
Sure.
closed off to it. And watching these guys turn into like come in there just beat up, I mean, really just beat up from life, man. And it's been rough on them and you can see it. They wear it. And then, watch
Yeah.
them get with a sponsor and work these steps. And in a matter of 5 or 6 months, this dude's a completely different dude. And he's coming in here smiling. He's talking about, oh, you ain't gonna believe what happened to me this weekend. And
Oh.
and it turns around, and then that opens up a whole new thing for him. And in the beginning, I always tell my guys, I say, I'm gonna say some stuff that's gonna tell you, you're gonna think I'm a little crazy. And maybe I am a little bit,
Hmm.
but later on, I'll bet you anything later on, you're going to be going, oh, yeah, now I see what you were saying about getting
Hmm.
plugged into whatever this energy is in the universe that we can seem to harness. Uh,
Yeah.
if we, but like you said, I have to do my healing work and I have to get some of this. Another analogy we use is like going through life with like a big trash can on your back what's got backpack straps because I can't help
Yeah.
everything every experience I have in life goes in my backpack. It doesn't make any difference. I can't help that. It's kind of like a hard drive or something. Everything that goes through this computer lands and takes a little space off of that. And I
Yeah.
get it in there. And before long, I got this whole big bag of stuff I'm carrying around and I don't even know it. It's kind of like that thing, like if you pick up and carry your kid from the time they're a baby and you keep on doing that, when they're a full grown adult, you can still carry them. That that's what happened with our garbage cans, and we don't even know that we've got all this on our back until usually it brings us to some kind of crisis, and what we call it a
Yeah.
bottom. And you go, oh, and you
Yeah.
start reaching out for help and get some help to clean that garbage can out and get the. I always like to say we say we dump it on the ground, we put this stuff where it belongs. We sort through it. The past needs to go in the bucket with the past and put it there where it needs to be. There's good stuff in that bucket too, man. We'll polish it up and get that bad stuff that's been rubbing on it cleaned up. We'll put that back in the can and keep it. And then I get to walk when I
Yeah.
walk away, instead of having this overflowing can, I'm got 25% full of good stuff and I got some
Hmm.
room for some more life experience and some more things to take on. And then when the next big hard thing happens, like what just happened with you, you've got some space in your psyche to be able to do that, because if
Yeah.
that can is full and you hit one of them hard spots, you don't have the capacity to manage it.
Right.
You fold
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. And another, analogy for that is filling our own cup, right?
Yeah.
Like we have to take care of ourselves. We have to fill our own cup, especially as parents, which is where, a lot of my focus and energy is right now. I have three young children.
Hmm.
And so, and a lot of my work is with parents. And so, I think of that too, especially with as parents. It's like we have to take care of ourselves. If your cup is not full, and then life happens, which it does, it's harder to get back up. It's harder to be able to stay steady in those storms.
Yeah, step one
Yeah.
says we talk a lot about powerlessness, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a funny concept, because it's not that I don't have any power whatsoever. It's not that, but I always say you want to learn a little about powerlessness, have some kids,
Yeah.
'cause you are you are at their mercy, man. If they're sick, you're dealing with it. If they're unhappy, you're dealing with it. If they're needing to do their homework and it's 10 o'clock at night because you didn't know it, then you're dealing with it. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I have a 19-year-old daughter and a 21-year-old son now. So I'm at
Mm.
most of that is behind me now. Matter of fact, my father and my son live here. So I've got three
Mm.
generations of people living in this house. And I ended up getting divorced as a result of my alcoholism. And it was in 2013, but my daughter lives with their mother, and we've repaired that relationship. We're really good friends now. Everything is cool. You know, it's everything is super cool, and I will credit recovery with doing that. It wouldn't have got repaired if it hadn't have been for me doing that healing work.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that that's one of, I mean, maybe even the most important part of doing our healing work. Certainly when you're, dealing with addiction, then health probably is the first reason that you want to take care of yourself. But otherwise it's like, well, what really hurts us in life? And it's relationships, right? Like we're wired for connection. We're wired to be connected to each other. And those are like the vehicles of how we grow in life is through our relationships. So yeah, I think that that work is really certainly going to be something that is required if you're going to be in conscious connections.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I should, like I said, I kind of got caught because of life caught up with me a little bit, and I usually brush up on the reason that you reached out to me. Most people are promoting something. Uh,
Mm.
have you written a book, or you got some program going on, or what? What? There's a reason you're here.
So, so I've written a book, but when I reached out, and I have some support, so as part of my PR team too,
Uh-huh.
my intention was really to share my book with people in the world that I felt like would align with it. And then I've just gotten a lot of interviews to come on and talk about it, yes, the book, but more so people have just been, the invitations have more come from an interest in my work. So I can share. I can also say like, yes, I'm open, like come follow me on Instagram and engage. And if you want like coaching and whatever, cool. But I'm also like, now I'm so comfortable and aligned with like, I am meant to work with whoever I'm meant to work with.
Yeah.
My book will be in your hands if it's meant to be in your hands. So there is no pressure from me in
Yeah.
selling anything here. But I can tell you, yeah, so I am a depth psychologist. And as I shared, that's a little bit different or a lot
And it's
different than
depth, 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 like deep.
DPTH.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a lot different than how most people, I think it's like 2% of America, well, American therapists are taught depth psychology. So it's very rare that we take this holistic soul level approach to our lives. And I'm very honored to work in that way. It's a lot more interesting as we're talking about here and rewarding. And so I'm in the business of transformation in many ways.
Hmm.
But the book that I wrote is its working title right now, as it's on its way to publisher, so it can always change, is The Art of Chaos. And The Art of Chaos is a memoir plus or prescriptive nonfiction, which basically means it's a memoir, but it teaches. And what it teaches through sharing my story of different heartaches and transformations and trials and triumphs is how not only, because I think there's a lot of, well, let's see, let me say first, one of the threads through the book is that story. It's really teaching what it is that I've done as a therapist for many years is help people move from trauma to transformation, trusting that there's meaningfulness in all things. So whether it's addiction or it's some other specific trauma or it's chronic PTSD or it's childhood stuff, whatever it is, this book really works to help people see my story, but at the same time, it's teaching them to see theirs, like take all of the fragments from their own stories and create what I really love is the image of stained glass, right? Like
Hmm.
understanding that when you look at a piece of stained glass, it's like, yeah, it's made from a million pieces, but it's actually really this one whole beautiful, beautiful picture. So I really help people through writing and journeying, if you will, kind of thread their own life stories together. But one of the main aspects of it is it's very much for parents, and it's not just for parents, but parents will really appreciate it because it's written in a way where it's like I'm talking about my own, trauma history and experiences when I was younger, and how those actually then led into being triggers and difficulties as a parent. So then I'm talking about something that I'm calling, or some other people call too, nervous system imprints. And so I don't want to overwhelm anyone here. So I'm just going to say simply, basically, as a mother of an autistic child who has been in multiple situations where my daughter is having a massive meltdown and she's screaming and maybe raging and maybe even as a baby, I couldn't even get her to like leave the park or a play date because she's like flailing her body, or I can't get her like I can't push her like arched back into a car seat to get her home safely. Like it's been total chaos in many ways. And of course it's been years, so this is changed over time what I see and think of it, but I write this story to mothers and fathers too, but really to mothers, where I show how, well, when I'm having a hard time with that, when I'm having a hard time with my kid screaming or my kid, doing something that maybe is embarrassing or not normal or whatever it is, that it actually goes back into my past and it will show you the things that caused pain in the past that are now living themselves out in me as a parent. And the child is the mirror. The child is the teacher, right? So the child is teaching us what it is that we need to heal within ourselves by what they're bringing up in us on that journey. So it's a really long way of describing that, but that's what came through. So I'm just going to trust it. But it is, in short, it's a memoir on trauma, transformation, and motherhood, and it also teaches you about your own imprints and how those show up in your lives as parents.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. Uh, I've had some experience. I had a girlfriend for a while that had a daughter who really kind of did this similar kind of thing. It really taught me a lot. I was a little weirded out about it at first and scared of it, and didn't know what to do and whatnot. But I think back on that period, and I'm still friends with her and them, of what like this little girl that was a lot different than any others,
Hmm.
and had definite sensitivities and stuff that needed to be attended to. And if you attended to them properly, things went pretty smooth, but you all could be surprised. And like, for instance, if
Hmm.
it was a group setting kind of thing where there was going to be a bunch of people, uh,
Yeah.
if you arrived early before everybody got there, and as people come in, she was fine in that regard,
Hmm.
but you could not bring her into a situation where there's a bunch of people. Now,
Hmm.
if it would come, and in a little while there's a bunch of people and everything's cool, but you had to really be attentive to that. And my friend did a great job and really has done a fantastic job of attending to Danny's needs in that department. And my time with them really was super educational too. And she touched my heart in so many ways that I will never forget it, and now
Yeah.
this was years ago too. And now she's a nine. She wasn't supposed to be born alive,
Hmm.
and one thing after another. And now that's just in May, she turned 19.
Hmm.
Just super cool stuff. Don't have a lot, I don't have a lot of experience in that department, but I have enough that I certainly can, empathize with those kinds of struggles. And also, at some level, all parents, whether if that kid is, no matter, I still did the same thing of when they don't
Yeah.
want to leave, or you're in the grocery store and they decide to throw a big fit, and kind of going back
Yeah.
to that same thing, and I would get angry at them because they were acting up in the grocery store, and it took me some time, and it took me to being in recovery to realize that was really me. It didn't have
Hmm.
anything to do with them. It was my
Yeah.
embarrassment and my image and all that was what was going on.
Right.
Self-centered and worried about what people would think about me. It wasn't so much about them. And I like to do games too now when I'm in the grocery store. I'm a single dude and I run around and I just do me. And I like it when I see kids acting up in the grocery store because I'll make funny faces at them and do stuff to like distract them and like without their mother knowing it. May not be
Oh
told.
gosh.
But I'll see the kid will like it'll snap them out
Yeah.
of it, and they'll laugh
Yeah.
or whatever. I've got a
Hmm.
really good friend that taught me a trick, and he does this, and he's like a recovery icon for me. It's another one. I have a miracle list in my phone of things that has happened these things that I can't explain that happened to me in
Hmm.
recovery, and my sponsor had recommended that I start writing these things down because I would forget them later on,
I
and
love
that's the
that. A
truth. I would
miracle
have.
list.
And it's kind of like a long-term gratitude kind of list, And if I'm down
Yeah.
some particular day, man, I can get that out. I can look at it and go, "Oh yeah, remember that, remember this, remember that." And this man coming into my life is one of those things. I listened to him on the internet for years, and then I actually had the opportunity to have him on my podcast, and we've developed a relationship. And now I've been down to visit him, and he's coming to visit me. And I'm going to take.
Hmm.
He's 81, and he wants
Hmm.
me taking fishing. So I'm going to take him fishing up here in a couple weeks in October. Uh, but he carries clown noses, a bag of them,
Oh my gosh.
and little tubes of bubbles to change the energy in places. Like he says, one of his
That's
examples is
amazing.
when he's in he lives in Nashville. When he's in a traffic
Yeah.
jam, he'll put
Yeah.
on his clown nose and he'll start blowing bubbles out the window. And he said, you can watch like the energy change around you.
Yeah.
You can have that
Yeah.
impact on things. And he also does the same thing when kids are acting up. He'll pull one of them out of his pocket, and he says, I don't want to it ain't cool for a stranger to give a kid something. So I always ask the parents for permission. Can I give them these bubbles? Can I give them this clown nose, or here, give this? and change that energy for some mother who's having a tough time in the grocery store or the airport or something
Yeah.
like that, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, when you get in this spot that you get to have this, you know, like I said, that powerlessness thing, you know, I got some power to be a positive force in the world today. And if I'll just let go of myself a little bit,
Hmm.
I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I love that for your friend and all the people that he's impacting in the world. And I also really appreciate what you're sharing. And there's so much coming up for me, and I'm like, okay, how do you speak to this on a more simple way than what my brain's about to do? But because what you're talking about too is like shifting energy and shifting frequency. And I am someone who knows that it's not like this, that is a simple way to do it, and I can appreciate it so much. And I'm sure your friend also has like a huge life history and story that they could share too, right? Of like getting there, because it's like it sounds so simple and yet it's so profound. And what comes to me is, in the art of chaos, what I wrote really is that the chaos for me at least was my experience and journey of like it was like the crucible of being able to be calm in the storm, right? Of being
Mhm.
able to find peace within, even though these things are happening out there. And in the state of the world today, on the macro level and even the micro level within our homes, with like everything that's going on with like screens and the environment and chaos, and children, it's so important that it's like it feels like it's so simple, and yet sometimes the simplest things are the most profound. But to be able to stay in yourself, in your body, in your nervous system, and to be able to shift the energy around you is actually, I mean, it takes a phenomenal amount of work to get there. But
Mhm.
once you get there, I mean, it's kind of like the key to life.
Yeah.
you know like
Yep.
it kind of is. It's like it frees
It does.
you. So I love that image and that story, and I can see it in my mind. I'm like, yeah, brings so much freedom to difficult situations.
Yep. Everything was a big deal forever, you know, and I took stuff. So another big book line is I made a heavy going of life, you know.
Hmm.
I carried it around like it was a giant big weight, and you know, and today I don't. You know, you can just kind of slide through things, travel lighter, uh, and you know, and don't let these outside influences, you know, you can't or minimize the amount of these outside influences to have that impact on upsetting my day. You know, used to be, you know,
Yeah.
my whole day could get ruined on on the drive to work. You know, and I don't let that
Yeah.
happen anymore. You know,
Yeah.
it's just not that important. But at one point in time, I could not do that. I couldn't. Uh,
Yeah. And I'd be curious if you want to share, like how you feel you got there, because it's not just cognitive, right? It's not just telling yourself to like, okay, just shift it and move on, right? Like I would imagine there was some work that went in and supported you getting there.
Yeah, well, the 12 steps is some work and it's a real actual
Yes.
program, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, it kind of, well, I'll tell you, my sponsor and I do a program and then we'll have another podcast. It's called the I Am One Two podcast. And the way that started was, you know, when Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous are saying we identify as an alcoholic or whatever. We are convinced that the 12 steps works for anybody. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
have something. And whether if it's tools for you, I don't know. I do know it works. And we have offered the 12 steps here in Louisville, Kentucky to anybody who would want to come try the tools. And our
Yeah.
identification is I am one too. You know, I'm a
Yeah.
struggling human trying to be better, trying to figure out how to do this crazy thing called life as best as I can.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
am one also. So we do that, and I've actually had experience with it and seen it work with people who are not, you know, personally taken, you know, and you know, in 12-step recovery, we generally kind of do stay within your genders and stuff, but because of this thing, this new movement working up, and it was started by men, the women, it tended to attract women, And so we
Mm-hmm.
sponsored, so that
Mm-hmm.
also brought some things into my life of sponsoring females through this work. And so I've had opportunity of having a pretty wide swath of walking people through the 12 steps, and one of the big things is the inventory where we look at these patterns and we look at our life and the things we've done and go back and dig up so that we can look at these patterns. We it will work in a fourth step. Well, and the fifth step where you confide with somebody and talk with a sponsor, and I got no kind of real qualifications, but I've got my sponsor's a licensed chemical dependency counselor in Louisville. And he's also been sober 41 years and I feel like I sit at the foot of a master. This gentleman,
Mm-hmm.
this gentleman that I know from down in Tennessee too, his name is Scott Lee. He's got 41 years at the same time. They both got sober the same year, and I got these two guys that are like my left and right hands that have been great teachers to me. But to take them through and see these patterns in their lives and understand these triggers and maybe why, like you had mentioned, you'd said some things that talked to me about, going back and figuring out why does this catalyst today do this to me? And I don't know,
Right.
I'm unconscious to it really. And until we
Yeah.
do that inventory work and look at that, and it's a really effective way to do it, and it's relatively uh, I'll say relatively painless, because you got to be a little bit careful stirring, picking those scabs, right? That can be delicate
Mm-hmm.
too, according to what your past has, and you can kind of overload somebody if you cause them to pick too many scabs at once. Uh,
Yeah.
so that process actually kind of prevents you from being able to do that the way we do the four step. And so we find that
Mm-hmm.
stuff out, and that's what happened to me. It was purely from working the 12 steps that got me to this one point that freed me up a bunch. But then really the next step of freedom and really where my true growth resided was taking people through this work
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
helping people and doing it, because every time you take somebody through it, it's that mirror
Mm-hmm.
thing. You're
Yeah.
seeing you too, and I'm growing
Mm-hmm.
along with them. And we say, you're helping me more and I'm helping you. I know that. Uh,
Yeah.
and the cool
Yep.
thing about sponsorship is, and I figured it out, at first you kind of had this like success, was I doing it right? And was I failing? And and you lose people, because that's just what happens in addiction, that kind of thing. uh, I found, I discovered that it didn't matter. Their success did not impact my recovery. I still got the growth points and the experience, no matter how good or bad they did, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
still had that. And once I could settle into that, that was another freeing concept of it to let go of the fact that I don't have to uh, be successful at it
Well, and
for being.
you don't have to fix people
I don't
either,
I don't have the power to.
right?
The
Yeah.
process
Yeah.
does it, and I'm just a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
a mirror for them too, to offer them different, because that was the other, there's an old time guy who wrote some books from the early AA days. It was called A New Pair of Glasses. He wrote this book, and that's kind of, that's something that my sponsor did for me. He offered me different perspectives on things from the way I was seeing it. And he'd say, well, what if it ain't really that? What if it's this, And he would give me
Mm-hmm.
this, and it would make sense to me too, because I was thinking about it in some other way. And when he would offer me this different perspective, it would shift me. And,
Yeah.
and then I learned to do that for my people too, to offer
Mm-hmm.
them these other perspectives that they could look at life in a different way, and have
Yeah.
that new pair of glasses on. Uh,
Sure.
so yeah,
Yeah. I like to think of it as like planting
yep.
seeds.
All
Mm-hmm.
this stuff takes some work, right? You don't grow and you
Mm-hmm.
don't heal without, we would love to like just put some hat on or something and some wires went up,
Yeah.
and you walked away and you're like, all right, I'm better now. Uh,
Yeah.
and we all, it seems that we all have this path in behind us. Like I said, this maturity thing that I talked about earlier, or whatever, about where it seems like you have to get. I see some people now and again, a 20-year-old, a 22-year-old will wander in the room of Alcoholics Anonymous and grab these tools, man. I am so happy for him because he's got a whole lot more time to
Mm-hmm.
enjoy that and grow and explore. I got sober at 45, that
Mm-hmm.
uh, haven't had quite as much time as these guys are going to. But for the most part, it seems that the trend is somebody's usually in their mid 30s to early 40s when they get to a point where they're looking for tools.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not always, there's always
Yeah.
exceptions, but on average. And where I was going with that, we've got this whole life history of this kind of, I don't know that we can help it unless I know some people that like have been like, I had great parents. I hit the bullseye. I mean, I hit the jackpot on the parent department, particularly my dad specifically. But it didn't
Mhm.
matter. Alcoholism did not care. uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Well, and I feel like, going back to imprints, I feel like I could give you a good example there. And because I think so many people, well, let's say, like, I think so many people think that, okay, so you have your group of people that think like, their childhood was all sunshine and rainbows. And honestly, when you hear that as a therapist, sometimes you're like, okay, there's maybe more work to do here than if we were aware of some of the things. But the bigger issue, I think, is like so much therapy and like psychology, pop culture, or whatever they're calling it now, but like the internet and social media is really pushing this narrative that, our parents are at fault for messing us all up, and like, well, that's like partially true, because our parents were raised by people who were escaping war and poverty and the Great Depression and whatever else, right? It's also true that it's part of our, I believe, like our soul journey to have these experiences. And what I was going to say is there are a lot of experiences that we have where we maybe it wasn't something horribly traumatic, but your imprint still impacts your life nonetheless. And so, an example that's just coming to mind is um, my partner, for instance, is someone who was raised in poverty and was raised alone. And what I mean by that is like his dad, worked as many jobs as it took to get food on the table. Sometimes there wasn't food on the table. And so they would go, my partner and his sister would go next door and like pull rhubarb off of the neighbor's tree to eat. Right.
mm,
And my husband, I keep calling him my partner, but my husband, he grew up, really believing that it's like, wow, my dad, is a really good man. He would do anything, etc. And he is a really good man, and he would do anything. And the imprint that came from that experience, or one of, is my husband's belief that let's say that love is endurance, that love is like martyrdom, meaning like the way that he would show up in our relationship is by doing, right? So he would just like do and do and do, and in ways like that's not going to emotionally meet me. So it's just one example of, it's like, even though we may have had, none of us have had perfect upbringings, but even if there's not like a significant trauma that you're going and relating to, it's like whatever your upbringing was did have an impact. It did teach you things. It caused you to choose the relationships that you chose in life. It caused you to, marry the people that you did, or it comes up in you when your child is having a meltdown, or a neurotypical child who just like won't do their math homework, right? Like it's, so I think that that point is really important too, because it's like we don't have to have had these like horrible pasts to have imprints that then later ask us to grow and heal things in ourselves and invite us to, evolve as beings. And another thing I want to say that was really coming through as you're speaking, there were a few things that were coming through because I'm very intuitive. One, I just want to throw out to you because it came up like 15 times before you said it. I was like, oh, he needs to, I bet he does apply these steps to everyone. So I think that that is your calling in some way. I don't know if you're going to go, I know you're going to pause in some places in life and then go and do other things. I almost feel like that's going to get bigger for you, but I'm just going to plug that and we'll see. But as you were saying that, I was like, oh yeah, that's like one of my gifts too. I can sit with people and I can see those
mm.
things. So I had to like spit that out. But the other thing I want to say too is there's a lot of research and interesting stuff coming out around the idea of like ADHD and highly sensitive people being the ones that are using alcohol and drugs. And
Mhm.
why? Because there's such high sensitive beings. right? So even though, you're saying, oh, I don't have any experience with that, as, autism, right, which is just a set of phenomenon that some, man in a white coat called autism, right? Like, as we learn more about it, what we're going to find out is we're all on that spectrum somewhere. And people like me, and probably like yourself, but I won't say because I don't know for sure. But people like me, I'm so sensitive to this world. Like it's my gift. I'm highly intuitive. I'm highly empathic. But those of us who are intuitive and who do follow the river very easily and can pay attention to synchronicities and tune in to, like, the eclipse is pulling me, so now I'm going to get in my car and drive however many hours, right? Those of us who do that are highly sensitive beings. And in this world, it's not really shaped for us. So it's a
Mhm.
very uncomfortable place to be. And so people use, they numb, they dull, right? So there's a lot of reasons that I wanted to really speak to, as to, yeah, maybe you didn't have like all of these traumas and you're like, well, then what happened to me? It's like, well, you're just like any one of us. Like, we're all walking the path with things to learn and heal and evolve.
Yeah. Yeah, I have that doing thing myself. I've listened to somebody talk about, there's a podcast I heard talk about productivity debt, and like
Hmm.
with my father, I learned like, I felt that, and this is untrue, and I know that today, but like in order to get his love, I had to be like doing things and be productive and to be so like,
Yeah.
for instance, when I'm a grown man and he moves in my house, and if I'm sitting on the couch or in a chair and he comes through, I got to get up and act like I ain't just sitting around doing nothing. You know,
Yeah.
I can't be caught just doing nothing. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but those things are all this stuff about learning about how you're acting, and that's not a bad trait, right? Being productive and being a motivated person is not a bad thing. And Dad is
Hmm.
always he's still a busybody, and is always doing something. And I picked that up, and in some ways it served me, and in other ways it has not, and to be able to start looking and putting a filter on that and try to set aside the ways that it's not serving me and use it in the ways that it is, it's one of those kind of examples what you were just saying. And so I can relate with your husband too
Yeah.
in that regard,
Yeah.
because Dad busted his butt all the time. We did
Hmm.
not sit still,
Hmm. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we
And
were
it
sleeping.
it imprints us, right?
I
And
like
then we
that too. I
carry.
meant to say that. I like that imprint word. I need that. So thank you
Hmm.
for that,
Hmm.
because it's hard
Yeah.
to put in a word in that to say, what something that doesn't like make you feel broken.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely not about being broken, right? It's like
Right.
just kind of like a stamp on the nervous system,
Yeah. Yeah.
and something that will, something that I believe is meaningful. Like, I think it is meaningful. But I think that kind of takes us, it'd be hard to kind of draw that arc right now, but just to get from the place that you just brought up, a question that I would ask, and you can just hold it as like curiosity with you, is like, okay, so you learned that like one of your imprints is that love, like, to be loved, I have to prove myself. And that's not always, right? But that imprint is there. So since I have to earn love, usually that shows up in ways where maybe you've had emotionally unavailable partners, or you've had people in push and pull dynamics, somebody that like comes close and then goes away. And when they go away, it triggers that part of you that's like, oh, I got to prove myself for you to come back, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I've had that
Yeah.
experience. Yeah. And have
Yeah.
been on the other side of it too, of, I
Hmm.
can like visualize myself in relationships where I am got one hand pulling you closer to me and the other hand holding you away.
Yes. Yep.
And my partner does not know what to do. I don't realize I'm doing that, right? At the
Yeah.
time I don't. It took some
Yeah.
work and some time and um I don't know. I've been flirting around doing this thing for 14 years. I don't have that much sobriety, but I've been, that was about the time that I, hit a bottom and went to my first AA meeting. And that was really what opened the door for me to begin to start, looking into things. And It all feels like you said. I see that that's like a, because I do believe like we have some journey I love, that I'm on, that I'm not,
Hmm.
and it all played out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
And it's continuing to do that. And that's part of that
Yeah.
being in the stream of life and just allowing it and following my intuition and doing the things I see. I always kind of think about, like I say God. I'm not a huge like a friend of mine offered me one thing. He said, I draw from all the ancient spiritual teachings, or I try to.
Mm.
I try to.
Hmm.
So I don't have any like one particular bucket that I'm in, but I still say the word God because I live in the USA. Uh, but
And in
God,
Louisville.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
Louisville. Uh,
Louisville. Okay. I
that's
can't
a
even
thing
do
we
it.
do here. Yeah, I know it. It's some goofy thing. I actually live in Indiana, so I can actually like say those people down there are a little weird. Uh, I- I'm somehow different. But God throws sticky notes out, and like the podcast is one of those. It was like an intuition thing, a thing. "Huh, maybe I could do a podcast." No, you can't.
Mm.
You couldn't do that.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, who knows, And my sponsors always given me that encouragement to do stuff. So I always had this guy on my side that I could be
Yeah.
open with and talk to. And he would say, yeah, man, I think, always encouraging me, always
Yeah.
encouraging me. And I've been doing a men's retreat for 10 years now that I have out in that place I was talking about, and that was another one of them sticky notes laying on the ground one day, that I just had. That's just an analogy. It really wasn't, but it was, hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're not qualified to do that, and
Hmm.
all that self-doubt. And then you talk to your sponsor and your friends and they go, yeah, that'd be great. We'll have a great time. Let's do it. And you do it.
Hmm.
And one thing after another of these things of, that being in tune with the universe, and following that. But it had, like you said,
Yeah.
it has come with a lot of years of working at it, you know,
Yeah.
uh, I'm starting over with a new sobriety date of September the 8th. So I'm
Hmm.
16, 17 days sober. I had a
Hmm.
fall, but I can't let that be I can't, sometimes that's the end for people, man. They don't make it back. But
Yeah.
I can't let that happen. And
Yeah.
I didn't get hurt too bad. I didn't really have anything. I didn't hurt other people too bad. And
Hmm.
you just get back up and get going again. It's not like I lost any of this
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it got erased. I didn't. I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm the only thing it is. I changed the date,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
but it
Yeah.
has caused a ripple around me. Some people are not.
Hmm.
Some people are not as
Yeah.
supportive as others.
Of
That's what
course.
said.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that. I imagine that's a vulnerable thing to share. And,
Oh, it
you know,
sucks.
it's part of the process. It's actually part of I actually don't know. I am familiar with 12 steps, but I don't know this. If you guys do speak about how, relapse, if we want to call it that, it is part of the process.
It
It
is.
is part.
Yep.
So it's,
And
and we're
we
human.
whatever this malady, disease, or whatever, that is the number one symptom of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If
Right.
we
Yeah.
try to like act like, because I want to say I don't have it.
Mhm.
I want to, in the beginning, you'd rather be schizophrenic than alcoholic.
Mm,
I'm looking for something else because I don't want to be that. Give me
yeah.
anything, give me another diagnosis. There's got to be something else. Uh, and when you settle into this and you go, well, okay, and you accept that, again, that's another thing that we talk about a lot is acceptance.
Hmm.
Then, relapse just drove another nail in it that, yep, you are one, you have this issue, Dan. You can't hide from it. You don't
Yeah.
start acting like
Yeah.
you don't. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is a process of it, and it does, long-term sobriety is a great thing, but for a lot of us, it's just not that realistic to think that you're going to do what my sponsor's done and stay sober for 40 something years.
Right. Yeah.
When you just try to kind of, you know, piece it together. You
Hmm.
hope, you're not. Uh, just, you can't make it into a big deal, you just have to get
Yeah.
back up, get back up and get back to work, do what works. And and own it, that honesty thing. And I got a great men's home group, like I said, and for the most part, I've got more support than most people have, I'm sure. Uh,
Yeah,
you know,
which is so important, right? I
I
mean, it's a
mean, yeah,
huge,
I mean,
huge.
I got 40 guys probably that I could call right now and they would come over
Mhm.
here and sit with me if I needed them to, you know.
That's beautiful.
Some of them
Yeah.
would, could I get all 40? No. But out of that bunch, all I would have to, we have a Discord group. And if I said, can somebody come over and sit with me? There would be somebody here as fast as they could get here. And that's a pretty
Yeah.
cool feeling
That
to
is a
have
very
that
cool
kind of
feeling.
support.
And I'm not surprised by that. I think as you shared not only through like your own work and journeying and the healing that you've done and then what you've brought to others but even through your podcast and how you like attract people from all over and connect, it makes me think of, I think it might be a human design term. Forgive me if it's not, but there's a term called like a super connector. Like there's
Hmm.
like certain people that are just like meant to like connect with people and then they connect other people. And it sounds like that's kind of part of your life path. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it kind of has been,
yeah,
in my, that you say, in my work life, and I see that, to you try to stay humble with it, right? Because that's
yeah.
a piece you got to have too, the humility of it. But yeah, I'm good at bringing people together, and I do, I'm a good teacher. I find myself in that role a
Hmm.
lot. That's what a sponsor is really. My
Yeah.
job pretty much is teaching people. Um,
Hmm.
I'm an undegreed engineer. I started as a draftsman at this place that makes big boilers for the power industry when I was 20 years old in 1991. I worked there for 28 years. And in 2019, they laid me off. Now, they gave me a good severance package. I'd worked there for 28 years. For 24
Mm.
of those years, I was drunk and a drug addict. And then for 4 years later, and 4 years sober, they laid me off, which I thought was interesting. I started actually feeling like I was doing my deal. And then, but I have this
Mm.
skill set. My dad taught me how to fix everything. I just totally discounted this. Like I can fix
Mm.
anything. I mean, almost anything. I don't like working on cars, although I can. But I started this handyman business, and there's just an unbelievable need for somebody to do small job handyman stuff. A kitchen cabinet door, drawer. The bathroom door won't latch, the bedroom door won't latch, or it sticks, or just all these little things. A receptacle isn't working. You want a
Yeah.
ceiling fan, you want a new light fixture, just all these small job stuff. For 6 years, I made a living doing that, and I have a little wood shop in my backyard, and I do some custom woodworking too. But I felt that energy of the universe taking care of me. That I got laid
Hmm.
off. There was that shock of that, because that security post of being tore off of that. And then, but I had some feeling in me that, the old, when one door closes, another one's opening. And I just wrote it
Yeah.
out, and they gave me a good severance package. And I also, during that time, I become a certified yoga teacher too. And
Oh, very cool. So
yeah,
you're just a jack of all
so I do,
trades.
yeah, I do a lot of things. Uh, but that all just developed organically. And then in February, that company called me back and asked me if I'd come back on a part-time basis so I can still do my handyman stuff and my woodworking. And it's just turned out to be perfect.
Yeah.
Uh, used to be that some nights you'd
Very
go to
cool.
bed on a Sunday night and not know that you had any work this week. It didn't happen often. There
Mm.
were those weeks, and now I don't have to worry about that anymore because I work
Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for this place, and they only hire me because I got that the power. It's a great time to be in the electric industry, in the power industry, with all the AI and everything, electric cars. We don't have enough electricity in the world,
Mm.
and
Oh,
it's
wow.
growing, and it's
Wow.
and we're our projections are off the roof for what kind of work we're going to have. And so they're staffing up with new people, and they need somebody that knows what they're doing to help the new people get up to speed. So basically I got hired in as a teacher, and I love it.
Wow.
I love sharing that
Very
knowledge with
cool.
people. So yeah, so thank you for that. It's cool. It's been neat to watch things unfold, and especially when you
Yeah.
can actually see it with the right set of eyes that doesn't take on the bad stuff too heavily, and be able to see that it seems to me that everything happens for a reason. And
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think on that note, I think I have to wrap, but
yep,
yeah,
I've seen that 10
absolutely.
after 7. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah.
I'll put your stuff in the show notes. I'll send you a link. I probably won't wait too long to put this out. I do just in time deliveries most of the time. I remember I said early on, somebody asked me to be on a podcast and I asked them when it was going to air and they said it'd probably be 6 to 8 weeks. I thought, I
Yeah.
may not even be alive by then. Uh, well, when in mine, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have them come out pretty much right on time.
Very cool. Well, I've really appreciated getting to know you and talking to you too. And thank you for having me on your show. And happy to stay in touch and hear how, this next chapter carries you forth wherever it goes.
Yep, same here. Yeah, I've super enjoyed it. One thing that this podcast has done is put me in contact with these wonderful people who are forces for good in the world. Because if you
Yeah.
watch in the wrong, because if your eyes are pointing a certain direction, you can think this place is going to hell in a handbasket, and it may be. But I choose to keep my eyes on people like you and these people bringing good to the world and trying to help these other people make the most of this thing called life. And you're doing that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. As are you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye, Dan.